We've got every single matchup and every single player for you and your flex spots to get your lineup set for Week 11. We're getting close to the playoffs, and it's time to win our leagues. Drop a like if you enjoy this video every week, and make sure, of course, you're subscribed. We're trying to get to 40K. We are less than 3,000 subscribers away, so we appreciate you guys so much. This one is what a Thursday night banger. What a Thursday night banger. And I'll just start with the New York Jets. It is a bad matchup for Breece Hall. You're still going to start Breece Hall this week. You are not going to start Isaiah Davis, of course. Breece Hall in the C tier, Isaiah Davis in the J tier here. And again, not a good matchup, not a friendly matchup. You don't feel good about starting Breece, but you have to start him just because. Now, at the wide receiver position, between Justin Fields throwing the ball 11 times last week, and no Garrett Wilson, and Mason Taylor probably being the only guy who could be relevant there. Who are the receivers in the Jets?
Well, let me just tell you. Alan Lazard, Josh Reynolds, Irvin Charles, A.D. Mitchell, Tyler Johnson, Isaiah Williams, Arian Smith, and John Mechie.
You would feel just as good starting Nathan and Avery as the Jets wide receivers this week in your lineup.
Yeah, I mean, this is effectively a 1920s offense.
Yeah, you are not passing the ball. The point of this is you are not starting a Jets receiver, so don't even pick them up. Don't think about it. Don't consider it. Sure, if one's probably going to get 12 points, fine. I'm fine missing out on that. I'm not trying to guess which one it is. I don't think it's going to be A.D. Mitchell. He'll probably fumble it in the end zone. So, like, you can start Nathan and Avery. If you have to start New York Jets, you would rather put us on a football field and start us. That is the point there. Yeah. On the New England side of the ball, yellow matchups for them, but their Vegas lights are green for both positions here. When you're looking at the running back position, Travion Henderson we're going to have in the B tier. Is Ramondre practicing today? Did you know? We're getting new injury data.
He had a limited practice today.
So it's going to depend. We'll act like he's not playing at the moment, and Travion's going to be in the B tier. If Ramondre does end up playing, we'd probably move both of them down to about the D tier just because we don't know how the split there is going to be. So we'll put Travion Henderson in the B tier, assuming he's the starter there. Dearness Johnson we don't have ranked. Wide receiver position, again, Stephon Diggs has been the guy to start there. He'll go in the C tier. The rest of the guys there I'm not comfortable starting. Matt Collins, Demario Douglas in the H and J tier. But again, neutral matchups for New England, and you feel good starting the ones in this offense, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, then our next matchup is going to be Washington and Miami. I mean, at this point in Washington, last season for them, we don't know when Daniels is going to be back, when Terry's going to be back, but right now at the wide receiver position, like Deebo Samuel's the only guy there that's going to have any relevant production, and he salvaged his day with a touchdown last week. We're going to rank him in the D tier. Miami's allowed the third least amount of points to wide receivers this season. I think Deebo is a shaky start. I do think Deebo is still a start because he literally, again, like I said, is the only guy left in this offense. With Luke McCaffrey going on IR, season-ending IR, with Terry being injured, it's literally Jalen Lane behind Deebo, and that's it. So while I don't feel great about Deebo, I do think you kind of have to flex him this week because, again, he's the only guy there. With the running backs there, Chris Rodriguez, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, and Jeremy McNichols, G, G, and I tier respectively for all those guys. Like, you can't start any of those guys. Every single one of them is a sit. None of them are really going to, well, one of them might produce if they get a touchdown. But again, very similar to kind of the wide receivers in the Jets offense. Do you really want to guess who's going to be the productive one there, or do you want to risk getting a goose egg literally in your flex spot? So Deebo, only startable guy for Washington. On the flip side of the ball, you only have two really relevant guys here in this offense. That has looked better. Devon Achane coming off a 40-point game. This is a really good matchup against Washington. I would expect him to have a really, really solid day. He's going to be ranked in the S tier. Ollie Gordon and Jalen Wright, J tier, sits behind him. Jalen Waddle will be in the A tier. He's been really phenomenal since Tyreek has gone down. And this is also a very solid matchup for him. You've got Washington allowing like the third most amount of points to fantasy wide receivers this season. Malik Washington behind him is going to be a sit in the I tier.
All right, let's go to the Carolina-Atlanta game. And Rico Dowdle's in the A tier for us, and Chuba Hubbard's in the I tier. It is a great matchup for Rico Dowdle, who has taken over that running back spot. We have him in the A tier for our rest of the season running back rankings. In the A tier this week for weekly rankings as well, because it is a great matchup against Atlanta, who has allowed the fourth most amount of points to running backs on the year. And so that it's you're feeling really good about starting Rico. He's a must start every week at this point. Ted McMillan has kind of continued that like 10 to 11 points per game, and so he's a flexible option. We have him in the F tier. I would say Ted McMillan is probably a meh. We'll give him as a meh this week just because, number one, you just haven't felt great about starting, but number two, there's only two teams on bye this week, so you're going to have a lot of other options. That said, wide receivers getting pretty disgusting. I still feel like you probably have to start Ted McMillan, but we're just not feeling as confident, and it is a very tough matchup. The Atlanta Falcons have allowed the seventh least amount of points to wide receivers this year in fantasy football, and Xavier Legette we have as a sit, and we are not ranking him. On the Atlanta side of the ball, it's a neutral matchup for Bijan, and of course, we'll put Bijan in the A tier instead of the S tier because, Tyler Algier has been getting more work there than we like. Tyler Algier is going to be in the G tier, and we're going to say meh for him. You're still starting Bijan, of course. That's not changing. He's still going to have crazy receiving upside. Algier's a meh because I do think he's flexible at this point. He's had some really good fantasy games here recently. And again, neutral matchup for those guys. For the wide receivers, it's a tough matchup. Carolina's secondary has allowed the fourth least amount of points to wide receivers in fantasy this year. But you still start Drake London, the A tier, who's been very good. And for that reason, Darnell Mooney is going to be a meh for us in the H tier. Probably lean more towards sit with Darnell Mooney because, again, it is a tough matchup against Carolina. But in this game, again, you do have some more flexible options at the wide receiver and running back 2 positions, particularly in Atlanta's offense, where you can plug those guys into your flex spot if you need.
Tampa and Buffalo should be a fun game to watch. Pretty important matchup for both of these guys. But for the running backs in Tampa, it's actually a little bit unknown. It's a little bit cloudy this week because Bucky Irving just logged in a limited practice, at least in a walkthrough today. That's on Wednesday when we're recording this. So again, if Rachaad White is the number 1 back there, he's a start. He's going to be in the D tier for running backs this week. If Bucky Irving plays, you're starting Bucky Irving, and you are not starting Rachaad White. You're straight up sitting him. Sean Tucker, a sit behind him in the F tier, whoever ends up being the starting running back there. Regardless of who's going to be the starting running back for Tampa, it's a really good matchup against Buffalo, who's allowed the 6th most amount of points to fantasy running backs. Emeka Egbuka, a must start in the B tier. He's been really, really solid. Had a great day. Off of the bye week, 23 points, had a touchdown, 13 targets. Again, his target volume is phenomenal. Don't know when Godwin's going to be back. He's a must start every single week. Tez Johnson, actually, over the last 4 weeks, has been really, really productive. 11, 15, 9, and 20 points for Tez Johnson. He's a good flex option. So I'll list Tez Johnson ranked in the F tier as a meh this week, and what's a neutral matchup for wide receivers against Buffalo's secondary. Then you've got Buffalo and their running backs. James Cook, A tier. He's a start every single week. He does have a lower floor than some bell cow running backs. That's okay. I would expect him to have a solid day against Tampa's defense, who's kind of middle of the road. Ty Johnson and Ray Davis behind him are sits. Khalil Shakir in the D tier is going to be a must start as well. Khalil Shakir, you feel very good about flexing every single week. This season, the last 4 weeks, he's had 6, 20, 11, and 12 points. He honestly just has a pretty high floor. He's only had a couple single-digit games this season. You can pretty much count on him getting his dues in the passing game, always getting a decent amount of target volume. He's a solid start. And then Keon Coleman behind him. We're not expecting anything big from him after he had a nice day last week against Miami. Not expecting him to be a start this week in the H tier.
I'm starting Keon Coleman in the Flock League. I have to.
Right.
I would say he's a man. This is a decent matchup for him. I mean, they're going to score a lot of points here. So, but I also don't have any other choice because all my players are injured. Los Angeles and Jacksonville, starting with the Chargers. Neutral matchups for the running backs here. Kamani Vidal in the D tier. Jarrett Patterson sit, not ranked. We're going to start Vidal this week again in the D tier. I think Vidal's a start for us in our flex spots this week for sure. We're getting a little bit more clarity on the wide receiver position for the Chargers late in the season. Now Ladd McConkey has separated himself again. He's now a wide receiver 1 on the season, which after the slow start, it's very impressive. He's continued to get consistent target volume, and Water kind of found its level with him being the best wide receiver in that offense. And so B tier for Ladd McConkey, QJ in the D tier. Both of them starts. QJ has touchdown upside. He doesn't have that 20-point upside he had at the beginning of the season, but he does have upside. Keenan Allen has been the odd man out pretty consistently now for about 3 to 4 weeks, and so we're going to have him as a meh in the G tier. Kind of sucks. You had Keenan. He was a solid start for a while, and now it's like you feel a little bit worse starting him. A neutral matchup for all those wide receivers as well. Going to the Jacksonville side of the ball, a neutral matchup for ETN, who's in the C tier. He's a start for us, and a sit for Bashal Tutin in the J tier. Again, nothing special about this matchup. The Vegas lights are red for this one, so either it's going to be touchdown probably or bust for Travis Etienne, so we'll see. The Jacksonville receivers have a tough matchup. LA is the second hardest defense for receivers to play in fantasy football. So because of that, Parker Washington and Jacoby Myers are both going to be mez for us this week in the F and the G tier. Feel okay flexing them if you need to, but if you have better options, we're probably plugging in better options at that point.
Then we got Chicago and Minnesota. On the Chicago side of the ball, it's DeAndre Swift in the C tier starting. He kind of reestablished himself as really the true number 1 option there in the backfield over Kyle Monangai. So he's going to be a must start every single week as long as he's healthy. Kyle Monangai will be a sit. In the H tier, this is a neutral matchup for running backs against Minnesota's run defense. It's a little tougher when you're talking about their pass defense with Rome Odunze and DJ Moore as your top 2 options there. Odunze is going to be in the B tier this week. We are going to list him as a start. He's been more consistently reliable this season. He's had his ups and downs this season, but I still trust him leaps and bounds more than I do trust DJ Moore. We're going to list Rome Odunze as a start in the B tier. DJ Moore in the F tier. Sorry, guys, call me crazy. There's only 2 bye weeks this week, one of which is the Saints. The other one is the Colts. Like, you can get around not starting DJ Moore. I'm sitting DJ Moore if you can help it. Like, I absolutely am. He had a 4-target game, no receptions last week, a total goose egg against the Giants defense. Before that, his 2 big games this season, only 1 big game was against Cincinnati's secondary. You can't trust that every single week. And even in that game, the most high-scoring matchup of the season in the NFL so far, he only had 6 targets on the day. So DJ Moore has never gotten a ridiculous amount of target volume this season. He has never eclipsed, like, I think 6 or 7 targets this year. It's not good for him. I'm sitting him if you can help it. And then Luther Burden also going to be a sit in the I tier. And again, Minnesota secondary has allowed the 6th least amount of points to fantasy wide receivers this season. So that's more of a knock on everybody there, including what the potential floor of Rome Odunze might be in this matchup. Minnesota, you've got Aaron Jones as a must start in the C tier. He's really the guy over Jordan Mason. They got so sick of Jordan Mason so quick. They were like, get Jones back in here and give him all the work. He's going to be a must start. Jordan Mason a sit in the H tier, and a neutral matchup when you're talking about Chicago's run defense. Now, the wide receivers are an interesting case here with Jefferson and Addison, because McCarthy doesn't throw the ball very much. This has really been hurting the upside of Jefferson and Addison. If you're going to take any game and say, okay, these guys can both produce at a pretty solid level and combine for 35 points, this would be the matchup. Chicago's allowed the 4th most amount of points to fantasy wide receivers this season. I would expect Jefferson to have a good day, and I will give you the green flag on Jordan Addison. And I do think that he's a decent flex option this week in the D's tier, just because of the matchup, and Jalen Naylor as a sit in the I tier.
Going to Green Bay and New York here. We'll start with Green Bay. Great matchup. New York's defense sucks. And so Josh Jacobs is an S tier start for us this week, with Emmanuel Wilson being an I tier sit for us. Again, great matchup for Jacobs. He'll be dynamite this week. The wide receivers could theoretically be dynamite as well. It's a top 8 matchup for them as well. So they have a green light. All greens for the running backs. Of course, the green light for the receivers, the fact that receivers aren't super productive in this Green Bay offense. So it's a yellow light for the offense. But Christian Watson, after Romeo Doubs is hurt, you don't have Matthew Golden. It's Christian Watson, and he's in the F tier for us this week. He's a meh. Dontavion Wicks is in the H tier. He's going to be a sit. I mean, you are welcome to try to guess which one of these guys you can start. But Christian Watson, you don't feel comfortable starting these guys, even in a good matchup. So, that's kind of where I'm at. That's why I'm going to list them the way that I did. It's a tough matchup on the other side for the Giants. Tyron Tracy is a sit in the G tier. Devin Singletary is a sit in the G tier. I don't want to start either of these running backs. I don't. And it's a bad matchup, and they both haven't been producing. Yep. The wide receivers, it's a neutral matchup, and Wandale's going to be a start for us in the D tier. Darius Slayton in the F tier, I'm going to have as a meh. I think both of them can be startable, but I think Wandale's the guy you absolutely are plugging into your lineups this week.
Jameis is starting. So.
And Jameis Winston, yeah, that's a great point. Jameis Winston is going to be the starter this week. So, honestly, Darius Slayton, I think, is a sneaky start this week as well. I think he could end up being a good flex option. So I'm going to have him as a meh, but I do feel pretty good about Darius Slayton, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and then you got Cincinnati and Pittsburgh. This was a pretty high-scoring matchup last time we saw it. So for Chase Brown in the C tier, look, Pittsburgh's got a tough run defense. I'm still going to start Chase Brown. He's been on a nice little tear the last few weeks. I'll give him his respect. And then Taj Brooks not ranked behind him. He's a sit. Both wide receivers for Cincinnati. Again, great matchup. Their pass defense in Pittsburgh is really poor. You have the 2 worst pass defenses going up against each other in this matchup. So I would expect big days from Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, S and B tier respectively. And then you've got Pittsburgh, where DK has been very boom bust, very up and down. Again, of all the weeks that you would expect DK to have a good day, it would be against Cincinnati. So we're definitely going to list him as a must start this week. Calvin Austin behind him is in the H tier. Calvin Austin has had some good weeks this season. It's very up and down. We didn't see what he could or couldn't do against Cincinnati earlier this season because he was injured. Honestly, I'd be more comfortable starting like Pat Freiermuth than I would be Calvin Austin. Pat Freiermuth went bananas against Cincinnati earlier this season. But again, if you have to flex Calvin Austin, that's fine. But again, I'm probably going to list him as a sit. Jaylen Warren for the running backs for Pittsburgh. He's the number 1 guy there. He's going to be in the A tier. He popped off against Cincy earlier this season. I would expect the same. Cincy's run defense is really bad, like the worst run defense in the NFL. Behind that, Caleb Johnson and Gainwell are sits.
Houston and Tennessee, what a game here, right? There are 2 players total in this game that I'm comfortable starting. Woody Marks and Nico Collins on the Houston side. It's a great matchup for Woody Marks. He's been the most fantasy productive guy there, and he's gotten the majority of the snaps. So he's going to be D tier for us. We're going to move him up a tier this week. Nick Chubb, H tier. You're not starting him. Again, then for the wide receivers in Houston, it's neutral. We'll start Nico in the B tier, but Jaden Higgins in the J tier. You don't want to start him until you see that multiple weeks in a row. And Dalton Schultz has also been very productive there as well. I think he's kind of the second target in that offense at this point. I'm not even talking about Tennessee. They're all sits. I don't want to start anybody in this offense. They are legitimately the worst team in the NFL.
Okay, now this matchup got a little bit interesting now because Marv was just declared out with appendicitis. So you've got a lot of moving parts in Arizona, but let's start with San Fran, the easy one. CMC, S tier start. Nobody else behind him is a start. B-Rob is a sit. Juwan Jennings is now a start. He's going to be in the D tier this week against San Fran. He's been pretty consistent the last couple of weeks. We'll see if Purdy can come back healthy regardless. He's the number one wide receiver there with Pierce all out. Never know when he's going to be back. Bourne behind him is going to be a sit. Now let's talk about Arizona. You've got a couple moving pieces here. Again, like I mentioned for the wide receivers, Marv is out. That means the number one is going to be Michael Wilson. We're still going to rank him in the H tier. Greg Dortch behind Michael Wilson going to be in the I tier. Even with Brissett back and even with all the snap share that Michael Wilson gets, he just doesn't get a ton of target volume, and he's not just going to walk into Marv's role. They're not the same type of wide receiver. I think you're going to see probably Arizona trying to slow the game down against San Fran, run the ball quite a bit, and then they'll just get the ball a lot to Trey McBride. I think this is just going to mean wheels up for Trey McBride and not really anyone else that against there might be a wide receiver in this room that has a really good day. It could be Michael Wilson. I can't comfortably tell you start Michael Wilson this week. I just can't. But for the running backs, Amari DeMarcado had 13 points last week. Michael Carter and Bam Knight behind him didn't get that much usage. So DeMarcado, I'm going to list as a meh this week in the G tier. Michael Carter as in the H tier as a sit. I will say though, if Benson is activated this week, it is going to get a little hairy. And I would say it's between Benson and DeMarcado. You'll have DeMarcado get the passing down work and Benson probably get a lot of the carries. I would expect that to be a split backfield in Benson's first week back, where both of them just remain mess.
All right, Seattle. This is a good one. Seattle and Los Angeles Rams now. We'll start with the running backs for Seattle. It's a bad matchup for them, the worst matchup in the league. That's why they're in the G tier. I'm just going to say sit both of them. I don't want to start either of these guys. It sucks that you have these guys and you can't start them, but you can't. Kenneth Walker's not startable. And in a tough matchup, you can't start these guys. No. JSN in the S tier. JSN's the only guy. It's a neutral matchup for him. Shaheed and Kupp, we just don't know how the split there is going to be. With Kupp, he had a big play last week that kind of boosted his production. So he had 9 points. Shaheed, he hasn't even really been involved in that offense yet. He had one target last week on 34% snap share. You don't want to start either of these guys until you know one of them is going to be a contributor for your fantasy team. So it's pretty ugly for Seattle this week. Now, on the Rams side of the ball, this is one of the matchups where you have two starting wide receivers. Puka in the S tier, Devontae Adams in the B tier. Neutral matchup for them. You start them both. And then Kyron Williams in the C tier. At the running back position, you're going to start him. Blake Corum in the G tier is going to be a sit. It's a bad matchup for both of them as well. Seattle's run defense is pretty darn good. And honestly, their secondary is pretty good as well. They're one spot away from being a red light here for the receivers, but you still have to start both the receivers anyways because it's Matt Stafford in the Rams offense. So, again, uglier for Seattle than LA, but this could end up being a little bit of a defensive game, I think.
Yeah, then Baltimore and Cleveland, I would expect to potentially be a rock fight as well. For Baltimore, Derrick Henry, the number one running back there, C tier, he's going to be a must start. This is a tough matchup. Third least amount of points to running backs this season for Cleveland. So if you're expecting a big week from Derrick Henry, I would pump the brakes a little bit. He's going to have a pretty low floor. You remember what he did against Cleveland earlier this season, 2 points with Lamar on the field. Zay Flowers is going to be a start in the B tier. If you're going to expect anyone to have a really good day, I would probably expect Zay Flowers in this offense to have a good day. He's going to be a must start. DeAndre Hopkins behind him in the J tier is a sit. Cleveland side of the ball, the only guy I'm comfortable starting for sure is Quinshon Judkins in a green light matchup for him. In the B tier, Dylan Sampson behind him is going to be a sit. Expect Judkins to potentially bounce back this week. Jerry Jeudy in the F tier. Look, I'm not going to say you have to start Jerry Jeudy. He's a must start after having literally one good game this season against the New York Jets' decimated defense when they traded away their two best defensive players. So we're going to have him ranked in the F tier because he still is a number one receiver there. He's listed as a meh. If you want to flex him, that's fine, I guess. If not, then I definitely don't blame you. Cedric Tillman behind him is sitting in the H tier.
All right, Kansas City, Denver is another one that could be a defensive matchup here. Red lights all across the board for every position here. So Kareem Hunt, meh in the F tier. Brashard Smith is a sit for us this week. Rasheed Rice in the A tier is, of course, going to be a start no matter what. Xavier Worthy is a G tier meh for me this week. You don't feel very comfortable starting him as well. He's around 10 points. He's a high floor. He's a higher floor / high upside flex option for you there. And so G tier, he's a meh. If you have better options, I'd start the better options there in this matchup. It's a bad matchup. Denver has the best secondary in the league. And Surtain is healthy, right?
I believe so.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure because I know he was banged up for a little bit. Marquise Brown in the eyes here is a sit for us. And then Denver, again, tough matchups for them as well. Kansas City's defense, very good. Not usually fantasy productive games between these two. Harvey in the D tier is going to be a start for us, though. Sutton in the D tier will also be a start for us. And then Troy Franklin, I will say, is a start as well in the D tier. Because with Sutton and Franklin, I think realistically the strategy here is to start both of them. They both have 20-point upside any given week. We've seen Franklin be more consistent recently, but I don't think you can sit Cortland Sutton. And so I think you start both of these guys. Tyler Beatty at running back, we're going to have as a sit. But again, red lights all across the board for defense here in this game. I do think there are some guys you have to start in this game, but they're going to be pretty boom or bust in my opinion. And you might get, Franklin have a big week and Cortland Sutton not. And it's just a matter of trying to choose between those guys.
Yeah, then we got Detroit and Philly. I would expect this to be a more productive game than what we saw on Monday night with Green Bay and Philly. But Detroit, 3 very, very comfortable starts here. Jahmyr Gibbs, S tier, got to start him every single week. David Montgomery, behind him, I'm going to list as a meh in the F tier. Again, he's very game plan dependent, just kind of how is the game going? What's the flow of the game? Are they ahead? Are they trying to slow it down? Then they'll give it to Monty. If not, and then they're going to be passing it quite a bit. But with the 2 wide receivers here on Detroit, Amon-Ra and Jameson Williams, A tier and D tier respectively. Amon-Ra must start every single week. Jameson Williams has been on a nice little tear since we told you guys to buy him. So hopefully you can continue that on this week against Philly, who's, again, been pretty neutral in terms of production allowed to wide receivers this season. Philly, you got Saquon Barkley in the B tier, have to start him every single week. Nobody else behind him is a start, no, not even worth mentioning. And then Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown. We're going to list them both in the C tier this week. I would say I'm confident that both of them could have decent weeks against Detroit. Detroit has allowed the 8th most amount of points to fantasy wide receivers this season. A.J. Brown, very boom bust, honestly very Jameson Williams-esque. This would be a matchup where you would be like, okay, yeah, A.J. Brown can pop one off this week. And then Devonta Smith has just been a more reliable option this season, where I'm definitely cool with you starting him every single week.
All right, and our last matchup, of course, any matchup with the Cowboys is going to be a good matchup for fantasy. Green lights for the Cowboys receivers here, CeeDee Lamb in the S tier and George Pickens in the B tier. Start them both. Easy secondary there in Las Vegas is not good. Javonte's starting the A tier. We're not starting Jaden Blue. Pretty easy. Again, you're starting the 3 guys we normally start in this offense. On the Vegas side of the ball, I am going to say start Ashton Jeanty in the A tier, of course, up there with Javonte Williams. Green lights for both these positions. Dallas' defense is cheeks, as we know. And then I'm also going to say start for Trey Tucker, which we might actually bump him up a tier. So he's in the F tier right now. But we might move him up to like the D tier instead, because I do think Trey Tucker is somebody you're going to want to start there this week, as is, of course, Brock Bowers is going to get most of the targets, but it's just so concentrated without Jacoby Myers. I think Trey Tucker's probably going to have a big game. So I think Trey Tucker, I'm going to list as a start. Tyler Lockett as a sit. Tyler Lockett's in the H tier. Raheem Mostert from a running back position standpoint, I'm also going to have as a sit. We don't have him ranked. And so there you go. That's every matchup. It's every player. We'll put the big tier list up at the end of the video here. If we could do that, share, that'd be great. So that you can see the whole entire flex tier list and make your lineup decisions based off that. But we love you guys. We appreciate you. Hope you enjoyed. We'll see you here next week.